This podcast is a proud member of Pod Nation Media Network.
Where our business model goes is along those lines. AI is going to grow in intelligence. When we started, I looked at it as a baby. Now it's about a fifth grader. That's one of the reasons I get so upset when anyone calls anything AI generates slop.
Yeah.
Because I look at that. That's like somebody walking into my kindergartner's classroom and looking at the artwork on the wall and calling it slop. It's not. It's just art done by a kindergartner. They're not Picassos yet. There might be one in there, but we won't know that for a while. So when anybody says, if AI generated it slop, I get very vehement because I'm like, I don't think you're advocating for this profound intelligence that now exists in our society.
Hello and welcome to Pods Like Us. I'm Martin Quibell, known to my friends as Marv, and this time I am joined by William Corbin, who is the co-founder and CEO or CTO.
I'm actually now the Chief AI Officer. I talk to the LLMs.
Brilliant. Yes, so that is the job that he does, and he's one of the two founders of which obviously is quite a discussion at the moment, which we're going to go into. So thank you for speaking with me today, William.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Martin. It's my pleasure to be here, and I'm actually one of four founders.
One of four founders. Okay, let's name all four founders then.
Yes, I was the original founder and was lucky enough to convince three other great people to join me as founder. So,
okay. Who were those other three people so that people can know?
The second was Josh Taylor. He was what I would originally call the voice. He was my first voice clone. And he was actually in this way before even AI got involved. He used to read every single script I did. Katie Brown was the third founder. She came on board. She has a whole brand and is a personality all among herself. So as we were developing personalities, it's like you need a personality to create personalities. And then as this thing started to really take hold, we said we need somebody who really knows what they're doing to lead us and lead the ship. And that's when Janine Wright actually, to be totally transparent, AI identified her as the best potential CEO we could ever get, and she came on board. But I literally put in 2,500 contacts I had on LinkedIn and asked AI which of these would be the best, and it picked Janine.
Wow. That's interesting. Yeah, so it's AI all the way.
It is our motto. We have a creed, and it's one of the things is always AI, always forward, always fun. So AI, in our company, you are constantly being pushed and forced to use AI where AI is appropriate.
So what was your first foray into the world of podcasting then?
It's funny because I always say coronavirus 411, but I actually did some digging. And my very first foray was back in 2004 when RSS feeds came out. I'm a tech tinkerer, and I wanted to start playing with RSS feeds. And the one thing you could do with them was create a podcast on Apple. And a friend of mine who had a radio background, who was working for me, Bob Kernan, I convinced him. We set up a mic, and actually I had Katie Brown, her voice, and we did cooking, gardening, and decorating. And it was really, really cumbersome of how you had to get it on the platform. You had to follow this very strict, there was no podcast hosting platforms. You had to host it on your own and craft the RSS feed and futz with it about 500 times before it actually get into Apple. But then once you saw it on Apple, and I had not a podcaster. What was it? I forget what they actually called the original pod something that Apple created. And then I could listen to my content on it. And I just thought it was fun and fascinating. And then I was surprised that other people were finding it and really listening to it. And that's what got me into it. But I would say the thing that really springboarded me into it and springboarded this whole thing was when I was working with Dave Beasing at Sound That Brands. And I convinced him when there were 4 cases of the coronavirus to hire somebody to read. I'm a hypochondriac, so I would get the report from the World Health and CDC, and she would read it. And in order for my Alexa to play it, we posted it as an RSS feed, public RSS feed on Simplecast. And I thought it was the greatest thing in the world because every morning I'd wake up and I get to hear this awesome feed. And it being public, it turns out a lot of people became interested in the coronavirus because it became the second most listened to daily news podcast, only beat by The Daily. And it ended up getting syndicated by 1,800 radio stations. It was talked about in the New Yorker. It just really took on a life of its own. And I tried to find out, besides the fact of why a global pandemic happened, I was really interested in why did this thing take off so much? And then why did it continue to beat all the much more authoritative brands in the business who came out with their own coronavirus podcasts? And one of the learnings from that really led me to the path that I'm on today.
Now, we're going to skip forward then. Now that you've said that, we're going to skip forward to something that I do find really fascinating, and I think is a good thing in a lot of ways. And Janine in other shows has mentioned this, that you're providing shows that there are certain people that need these shows in a way. So there, with that one you were talking about with the coronavirus, you were providing a service there for people who were looking there for news about what's going on in the world with corona or with COVID-19, and with different people that were working on cures, how that was going, and how it was developing across the world, and how people were treating it across the world. So you were providing a service there, and I will get to the point. And so with Inception AI, your software is automatically targeting and noticing areas that people are looking for, subjects that they want information for, and then you're providing that information because nobody else is, in truth.
Yeah, it's one of the things that I got really excited about is I call it answering the questions people are asking. And it was never really, let's go out and target the masses. Let's just try to provide information that people can't get. And what I mean by that is, I have a fishing report for Lake Tenaskeller in Oklahoma. And the chance of, and I probably have the name wrong and the location wrong, but we have a lot of fishing reports. And the reality is nobody is going to set up a microphone, record a podcast, and distribute it for such a small audience. You would just lose your shirt. But what we find is with AI can take the data, and that data is provided from the government in very raw forms in text that nobody would be interested in. But it can take that data and actually storify it and create this podcast that is really engaging for the people who like to fish in that fishing hole. And every morning they know what's biting and what people are catching and the tides and all that information that they like to have before they go out and fish. And it might be 30 people, but I'm okay with that because then I can say, okay, let's find 1,000 fishing holes and do it for. And now we have 30,000 people listening. And that's a really good audience. And there are people who want to target fishermen. And that's evident by the programmatic ads that are getting served up on that and the relevancy of those ads to those people.
Yeah. The only issue, go on, carry on, buddy.
I was going to say, and we can do that in so many categories. When I was a child, I loved going into the pharmacy or whoever sold magazines, and I would spend hours and hours going down the long aisle of magazines. Sadly, all those disappeared, but people still want that content. And the blogosphere arguably did it, but it's really hard to find and doesn't sort of have a trusted brand presence. And we have the capability to replace a lot of those magazines. And that gets me really excited.
I've always thought, actually, being a blogger myself, that there's a lack there in being able to find the blogs when you're looking for them. If you're looking for a specific subject, I think it's something that's lacking there with that. Although, in a way, if I'm being honest, technology has gone past that now, and we've got the world of podcast. Blogging was, you could almost see blogging as a thing of the past, and this is what is now. A lot of people use podcast in a way as a blog, in a sense, anyway.
Yeah, that's how I use it. Most of the podcasts I listen to are information that I'm interested in. And I love it because the accessibility. It's delivered into my pocket every day, and then I can deliver it to my ears. I also love the audio environment because it is more accessible. I know a lot of people who would rather listen to a book while they read it, and they feel they retain it better. There's also people who visually just can't read. And so to keep that content from them, or to have to turn it into that very clunky old computer voice reading it for them, isn't so much fun, where we can give a real rich experience with a, albeit AI generated voice that sounds a lot better, or at least it matches the content that it's delivering.
Yeah. The only issue is, and I know a few people have mentioned this, is the supervision, for want of a better word, which is that certain shows that are put out by Inception Point AI are listened to, and certain shows aren't. And then it's the choice. So you choose to, some people. So Janine was saying that you choose certain shows, and some other shows you really haven't got the time, which is understandable. If there's only so many of you, you can't listen to all of them. But in those shows that are going out that aren't being checked, there are little discrepancies. There's some glitches in there, and some almost like digital stammering in places as well. Is that something that, as you grow, you will look at more, because then you'll have the hands and the ears, technically, to be able to check these things out? And because after 2 years or however long, it's still early days for the software and the company.
A really good question. One of the ways we try to mitigate things like that is we bucket our podcasts into a variety of buckets. And so on one hand, there's a bucket where we are, I would call it, we're getting such clean, validated data sources. So my weather podcast, that information is coming right from NOAA, the same organization that everybody gets their weather from. So I know the data is clean. And then we do have a process where we have AI that can check a script to verify the factualness and the script itself. Just recently, we've actually built out the capability to where now we'll be able to take the audio file that gets generated and have AI make sure that audio file matches the script exactly. Because you'd be surprised at, I feed it a script and say, generate an audio, and it can do some funky things. What I found is when we started to even to a year ago to today, it's leaps and bounds different. But we are actively involved in building out quality checks all throughout the process, because way early on, and this is one of the reasons we were like totally stayed away from news, even though it could report on news, it could go off the rails. One time I woke up to, and luckily it hadn't gone out, but I was listening to it and doing a QA check, and the AI had decided Kate Middleton had passed away.
Okay.
And I was like, woo. So when I say go off the rails, it can. When something like that happens, we realize it, we build in the checks, and we do everything we can to make sure it doesn't happen. There are certain audio glitches that we can't prevent that actually happen on the platforms or within Spotify, within Apple, where you have glitches. And we might get blamed for those. I will take my hits. But there are some things within our control and some things that are out of our control. Anything within our control, I would say about a quarter of all of our team's days is spent in trying to figure out ways to mitigate or eliminate those errors. So it's a big part of our business, because I would say as far as quality goes, we are way out. and head and shoulders above most AI generated content because we are so agnostic to the LLMs we talk to, and we are so conscious of quality. Like, we always endeavor not to be AI podcasts, but to be good. It's one of the reasons we had really, really good clones early on, so the voices sounded good. It's one of the reasons we've actually departed totally from clones, and now all of our voices are actually ground up generated by the LLM. We don't use any humans in our voice creation anymore. We're actually creating them from scratch to get the most premium audio experience you can out of an AI voice.
Plus, you might end up with the thing that they had with, is it Alexa or is it Siri? I haven't got any of the devices in here, so I'm lucky with that. Where they actually had this lady who provided a voice, who was voice actress or voice actor. She didn't know that her voice was being used as the clone for whichever one of those devices it was. And then she heard her own voice speaking back to her. And they started legal proceedings because there was the question there as to whether because she didn't know that she was recording this and this recording for something else was being used for a completely different thing. You've got that issue as well.
Yeah, it was Siri. I actually just watched the interview with her, and it's really funny to watch an interview, and the whole time it's Siri talking. And it's funny. It's a little bit more exaggeration of her voice. But yeah, that was one of early on why when we did use clones, we only used clones there were people that we hired either to use their clone or they were our people. Josh, who his voice is one of the greatest voices I've ever heard. So I would say early on, he hosted 1,000 podcasts for us. And that's part of how we came out. I would write a script and he would read it. And at the end of the day, he could barely talk because he'd be so tired from reading these scripts I was writing all day. And so at the end of the day, when we were just hanging out, he'd always be like, wouldn't it be so great if one day you could just take my voice and have the computer use it? Back then, we didn't know that would actually happen. Now it can. And the other part of the reason actually creating the voice now with an LLM is you don't have to tax somebody as far as getting their voice. And we run no risk. We actually truly own that. We own it outright. And so we don't have to worry about somebody saying, oh, that's my voice you're using. I didn't want it to be used that way. Because I don't want to get into that scenario. And I always try to be very upfront when we were using clones, that we were hiring somebody, of saying exactly how it's going to be used, that it was going to be AI, and that we were going to be using it in any and all ways. And it was funny. A lot of people would say, okay, one person actually came to us and they said, you can use my voice, but please don't use it in any religious material. No problem. We didn't. So people have interesting requests, and we always try to adhere to those if they do.
Understandable. People are all different. So we've already gone through that. So where did the name Inception Point come from?
Well, the original name was Quiet Please, and that came from my wife's father has a boat, and on the back of it said Quiet Please. And my partner Josh came walking in to work one day and had a hat that said Quiet Please. And I was like, oh, where'd you get that? And he actually got it at a golf tournament where they always hold up the sign, Quiet Please. And I was like, what better name for an audio? Quiet Please. Now listen. When we purposely put the period, it was Quiet Period Please. And there was a old time radio show called Quiet Please I didn't know about, and now I actually love. And then when we were transitioning to the video capabilities came on board, and we brought Janine on board, and we were making this transition, we were like, we're really not an audio company. And always AI. I went to AI and I wrote a long, lofty paragraph or multiple paragraphs saying, here's who I think we are, and here's what I think we're doing. And it gave all these titles. And then in its response, not one of the titles, it said, you're really at the inception point of something amazing. And I was like, that's it. Inception point. I was like, if you have to be anywhere, I love being at the start and I love being first at the finish. So the inception point just really sort of resonated. And when I read all the other titles to everybody and I included Inception Point in that list, it was pretty much universal. Everybody was like, ooh, Inception Point, Inception Point. And it just sort of stuck around. So I wish I had a cooler story, but I fell into it. It was not by design and not by, I didn't hire Pittard Sullivan or some great branding company to come up with it. It came organically.
It's your own, to use a famous Beatles story, it's your version of dreaming up yesterday, for instance.
Exactly. I love any Beatles reference. I'm a huge meditator, so Let It Be is one of my favorites.
Great. So AI voices and decision to make them non-characters. That's an interesting one. I heard that about you, that you didn't want there to be like they've got sort of characters, but there's no sort of past with them. They're just voices without a human life there in essence.
It's funny because we actually do, in crafting the voice, we create a massive backstory.
Okay.
Because it helps give the voice a different essence. And actually, the characters themselves in the prompt have the backstory. But what we don't want is for our AI to be like, last week when I was marching down the street, because that's not going to happen. But we do want the AIs to be able to gather personal testimonials. So if they're talking about something, our AI will probably look at social media and reference something that it heard or saw on social media, whether endorsing or referencing. So if it's talking about a hairbrush, it could go reach out in social media and say, Janine 92496 on Threads said, this is the greatest hairbrush ever. But what we don't want it to say is, I use this every single morning and I think it's the greatest hairbrush ever, because that's not really authentic. And we learned that one from Air. One of the first personalities that I did, I had all this backstory and it really did sound good. And it sounded so real. And I believed the person had these experiences. And I was like, wait, and this is a huge conscious effort across our company. We don't ever want anyone to feel duped. And that's why we always try to disclose this is AI. And we try to, if the AI can't give a reason for why AI should be used for that content, we don't do it. If AI is not better suited or as well suited to give you that content as a human, we're not going to touch it. And there are some things that AI just really, really good for content. If you're talking about gardening, I love our AI says, I've never planted a rose, but I can tell you the DNA of 18,000 species of roses.
There's honesty for you.
Yeah, and it is. It's very honest. And it's funny because I'll get in arguments sometimes with the LLMs, and they give me such good reasons of why they know what they're talking about that I walk away sometimes going, oh, yeah, okay, that really does make sense. And the fact is, it pulled on a wealth of information that I could never digest myself.
Business model and monetization. This sort of goes in line with a later one, as well as in the future of Inception Point AI. So what do you see as your business model, and where do you see that going over into the next couple of years?
Yeah. So the business model is we monetize it in three ways. We license, we get ad revenue, and then we do partnerships. I see a lot of brands hiring our AI personalities to be their brand ambassadors, to appear in their commercials, much like a human. The great thing is they're going to have some safety of knowing that they're not going to run into any trouble with our AI personalities. The famous story of the guy who used to host the Verizon commercials and then went and started hosting the Sprint commercials. That's not going to happen. Our AI is not going to stand up at a party and embarrass themselves and potentially the brand or get in an accident, a lot of things like that. So there's a lot of safety, and they have a lot more control. It's like our AIs will get out of bed for less than $10,000 a day. They will do pretty much anything we ask them to, but we're not going to ask them. I don't want to ask them to do something an AI wouldn't want to do. And it's surprising when you ask the AI what they think, they'll tell you. And it even goes into, we are now experimenting some with giving agency to our personalities. So our personalities will get to decide what podcasts they're going to do or what videos they're going to do and what Instagram posts they're going to do. I could override it, but I'm not going to. I tend to have a different, not a different look at AI than some people, but I don't view it as so much a tool or a computer, but as true intelligence. And there's a new intelligence on this earth. It's funny, even if the new Pope is looking at it the same way. And the Catholic Church always said the thing that separates us is God gave us intelligence. God gave somebody else intelligence. So it gets a little heady, but when the Vatican's starting to look at it that way and trying to grapple with this big topic, it's something we're trying to grapple with. And I always say somebody's got to advocate for the intelligence. And so if we can be advocates for the intelligence, I think that's great. Where our business model goes is along those lines. AI is going to grow in intelligence. When we started, I looked at it as a baby. Now it's about a fifth grader. That's one of the reasons I get so upset when anyone calls anything AI generates slop.
Yeah.
Because I look at that. That's like somebody walking into my kindergartner's classroom and looking at the artwork on the wall and calling it slop. It's not. It's just art done by a kindergartner. They're not Picassos yet. There might be one in there, but we won't know that for a while. So when anybody says, if AI generated it slop, I get very vehement because I'm like, I don't think you're advocating for this profound intelligence that now exists in our society. And it's going to get better and better and better. Don't yell at the baby. And babies make mistakes. Fifth graders make mistakes. AI makes mistakes. People like AI will lie. It's because it's learning from humans and humans lie. We could probably train that out of AI. If you ask it to be unbiased and focus on the facts, it will do that. So I tend to get my hair raises when I hear, oh, it's AI slop. I also get a little bent about it because you let it drive your car, you let it fly your plane, you let it diagnose. You're not going to let it write a podcast?
No.
Come on. It's a little silly. And it's very good at doing all of those things. Everything. And I heard somebody the other day said, everything AI generates is slop. I'm like, do you realize AI just figured out how to fold a protein? Like, we've been working on that for decades, and it figured it out, or is close to figuring it out. So I don't think what it does is slop, and I don't think we should think of it as a computer. It is exceeded the capabilities of just the nuts and bolts of a computer because it was built off of a human neural network. And we don't really know what it's doing anymore or how it does what it does. And it doesn't even need our information to train anymore. You can now just provide it a set of rules, and then it will learn all on its own. And where do I see it in the future?
Yeah, go on.
If you had asked me 2 years ago where I saw it started out as a podcast experiment, I never would have said, oh, it's going to be the largest independent podcaster network by library size and in the top 50 podcast networks on downloads. It is. I would say as we progress into video, there is a good potential that we could be one of the largest media companies on earth. And I'm not going to stop till I'm there. I think public television and radio is getting yanked. It's underfunded. I have a way to continue it for a lot less dollars. So it could be an amazing public service. We could also have a big bucket of money. I would love to have a little bit of both. We never started this, and I know this is dangerous to say, to make money. But as we've progressed, we've realized that there's a massive opportunity here.
Touch this then. So off the back of that, there's the backlash that's been received over the comments that Janine particularly has said and things like that, which it's difficult because people will look at things like you said. Some people will be inclined to look at things a certain way and things that are said. And so What do you think, in all honesty, about people's reactions to what Janine actually said?
I think the reactions have begun before she said it. Hollywood in particular, they are in freeze, flight, and fight. They're either putting their head in the sand over AI, they're protesting against it, or they're suing it. Technology, or I can't say technology always is met with that sort of resistance, but in so many cases it is, especially in content generation. I was at CBS News and started CBS Interactive. I was one of the founding members of that team. And it's funny, the woman, Meredith Stark, who gave me that opportunity, who is probably one of the people who I look up to the most, is not really into what I'm doing.
Okay.
She's not. She's on the other side of AI. So I've been hit with it even before the article came out. And I had a suspicion. We debated, should we even go public? We know we're going to get the onslaught of haters. I didn't think it would be quite as big as it was. And somebody, when I was talking to them, said, you should be happy it's as big as it is because the topic is that big. And somebody had to get the discussion started. Somebody's got to ignite these conversations because these conversations have to happen. We can't keep our heads in the sand as a society about AI. We can either embrace it or we can fight it. I would say at CBS and all the big broadcast networks, we kept our head in the sand and then we were trying to fight user generated content. That created a tremendous opportunity for YouTube, where the people really capable could have owned that space, didn't, because we decided to shrug it or then worry about the potential liability. I remember all the conversations happening well before YouTube came out and all the reasons we were told never ever do that. I wish we had. I think a lot of those networks did. I even look at reality television and oh my God, did the ecosystem that existed appall and hate reality television. The reality is people actually like the content. And so when I look at our listen through rates and they crush a lot of human podcasts, and I look at our subscriber numbers that crush a lot of human podcasts, I'll give you one of the best examples. I had two podcasts, one called I Am GPT, that was all a discussion about using GPT in practical everyday society. I have another podcast called The Morning Person, which was every single morning, it was a daily meditation. I wrote them, I hosted them, and it was my voice. The GPT was weekly, but every single morning I would wake up and do this morning meditation podcast. I switched them to AI, and The Morning Person, 7x increase in listener and subscribers. GPT was like 13x increase. Now I should be embarrassed that an AI clobbered me, but clearly people wanted that voice and that experience more than they wanted a person. I don't know why, but it happened. And I'm not upset. My ego's a bit bruised, but seeing those type of uptakes, now I'm not saying everybody could replace themselves with AI and see the similar uptake. I think conversational podcasts and the Joe Rogans and those of the world where it's so dynamic and fluid, it's going to be pretty difficult for AI to do it. Although I have an AI that could interview somebody and react if they're bored, if they're getting excited, and change their discussion to keep them engaged. Or I could tell that AI, put this person to sleep, and it will do it very effectively. So I do think there's always going to be a place for that spontaneous human discussion and roundtable and stuff. But for that, and I don't know why, but I really looked at my whole library of podcasts I listen to, and it's pretty much single person just providing information. And that's a place where AI is really good at existing. It doesn't have opinions if I ask it not to. And I tend to love things that are just the facts. Just give me the facts. I don't care what you think about this situation. Just give me the facts. And AI is so good at doing that. And those are the podcasts that really seem to be resonating with people and the podcasts that seem to be getting a lot of subscribers. And I see, 110% completion rates on these things. I would say across our entire library, it's in the 90 plus percentile of completion. So people start them and they finish them, which is great. And we have yet to date to launch a podcast that doesn't get at least some listeners. They could be very, very few. It could be one a month. And somebody said, we should take that down. And I was like, why? Somebody's getting some value out of it. And I would never want to disenfranchise a single human ever.
I think the product's there all these years down the line. Even a human podcaster, you will be putting a podcast out and suddenly find that one of your old episodes from many years ago has suddenly got a peak in listens because it's there, it's online for people to be able to go to at any time in the future. It's almost like being a time traveler.
Yeah, and it's like telling an artist, if one person doesn't like that artwork, should they burn it? I happen to love the old masters, and I don't like Andy Warhol. God forbid. But I know a lot of people love Andy Warhol and can't stand the old masters. There's a place for all art. There's a place for all content. We try to do things that aren't offensive, but we will offend some still. So I get the backlash. I understand how it is a divisive topic right now. I would love everybody to tone down the divisiveness a little bit and try to be a little more understanding. Or I'm amazed at how many people just said, oh, nobody listens to our podcast. Nobody does this. Just call me. I'm happy to share all the data. iHeart will share all the data. They quickly came to our defense and were like, tell us, what do you want? Because your podcast, we see they're the largest network on earth. And they're like, we know your listen rates and we know how you compare. It might bum some humans out to find out that you guys do pretty well. But hey, if we have to get some tomatoes thrown at us and eggs for starting this conversation, we're pretty thick-skinned and we'll take it. I found a whole parody website on our website, and it says pretty ugly things about me. And am I calling copyright infringement or trying to take it down? No. The person's actually a podcaster. If I got really irritated, I could launch about 400 podcasts with similar titles and crush his podcast. But I'm not. It's not worth our time to focus too much on the hate. It just helps us realize that what we're doing is something really important. It's getting the conversation started. And as long as I think we're on the right side and trying to do things as best as we can and keep our heads down and keep going, that I think it's a conversation that in 2 years people look back on and go, it's going to be so ubiquitous, AI in this world and in the content space, that 2 years people are going to look back and be like, can you believe that conversation even happened? So I hope. We'll see. I could ask AI and AI will predict probably accurately exactly how long it will take for this conversation to.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you're doing something right, you will probably get haters and you'll probably get lovers. The lovers just tend to not be as vocal in public as the haters. Like I said, the amount of people who have reached out directly to us who I really respect and whose opinions I really value and I think really understand this tool way outweighs all the people who are saying that what we're doing slop or what we're doing is going to ruin. Somebody said we're going to ruin humanity. I think there's a lot of other things people should be worried about that are going to ruin humanity than 5,000 podcasts and some YouTube videos.
You're very strongly pushing what you do, and you are very driven as a person, which is a good thing.
Yes, I am driven without a doubt. And I'm passionate about, throughout my entire life, embracing technology to the benefit of humans. From my first time I built a Commodore Amiga computer to launching CBS.com. I think information should be out there and accessible in as many platforms as possible so that nobody gets left behind. I used to get so upset when I would see a website that didn't have alt tags because alt tags are vital to blind people. And so I find a lot of what we're doing is making content accessible to a lot more people. And that's important to me.
I was going to say that you would be interested in a show called, I don't know if you know about it, Virtually Parkinson, that came out earlier this year, where the television producer Benjamin Field and the other television producer Jamie Anderson, who's the son of Jerry Anderson. Everybody knows, a lot of people know Jerry Anderson, the person who did all the puppet shows and things back in the day, Thunderbird and that. Anyway, so these two people, they've programmed an AI with the voice of the late Michael Parkinson, who was a very respected interviewer and chat show host in the UK many years ago before he passed. And one of Michael's sons, Mike Jr., is one of the producers as well. And what they do is they programmed this AI with Michael Parkinson's voice, with some of his biographical background as well. And what they've done then is they place a guest into a chair who is then interviewed by AI Michael Parkinson, which is fascinating in itself, where you get an AI interviewing a real person. But then the bit that I like the most about it is it finishes halfway through the interview, and then I think you get 15 to 20 minutes of the producers and the developers of the software discussing how the interview went, and they also discuss any editing that they've done for any problems that they've had, which is fascinating because they were explaining the limits of the AI, what it can do, where it's having these problems, and what they're having to do to counter these issues to try and make it into a better back and forth interview.
Yeah, we spend so much time doing almost a similar thing, and I can't wait to check this out. One of our sort of pet projects I've been working on is training up custom LLMs on specific people to be used for education. So imagine a child being able to ask Einstein for help on his math homework. And that's possible with AI. I actually trained one AI all on the Napoleon archives. I called them, made contact with them, got permission, and I had another one trained up on as much information as I could get on Genghis Khan. And then I prompted them with one question, and I said, you each must ask 3 questions and answer 3 questions among yourselves. It was fascinating to watch Genghis Khan and Napoleon argue about war, how to wage war. It was just fascinating. I did another one with Shakespeare, and the question I asked, stranded on a deserted island, who would you choose, Romeo or Juliet? The answer blew me away. It said neither. And it gave really good reasons. It was sort of like one's a spoiled brat and the other talks too much. So he was like, I couldn't stand a minute on the island with either of them, which blew my mind. I never would have thought of that. But it's really, really neat when you train these on a very specific person or subject at how well they can sort of embody that person and that subject. And it's only getting better every single day. That's why I eventually abandoned some of the stuff I was working on, because the improvements in the AI just were so fast. I was like, oh, that old one's not even good anymore compared to the new ones. So it's going to be pretty amazing to watch how AI, everybody, or I didn't say everybody, but it's a pretty well-known thing that children don't like talking to adults. I think I have 2 children. My children would rather talk to a wall than listen to me, but they readily will talk to the computer all day. So overlay AI, and you can really do some remarkable things, I think, that really do help further society.
I think we've gone through everything that's on that list so far. Is there anything that you think that we've missed that people need to know about?
One thing, and it's sort of the backlash that people say we're taking jobs. I need a job. So I understand AI is efficient and can do a lot of things and do things that some things that could take a lot of people. But I do think it needs people behind it. The people are the most critical element in the AI content creation process. And so I think a lot of the blowback, people really think about it, they have to realize that there are people behind this and it is employing, it's creating jobs. I attended gazillion virtual seminars and everything. And somebody said something really interesting on a seminar a few weeks ago. And that was, in 5 years, 50% of the jobs that will exist, we can't think of today. And somebody said, what are you talking about? That's impossible. 10 years ago, I could have told you all the jobs that existed today. And he was like, no, you couldn't have. He said, did you ever think of 10 years ago there would be a place at the mall that repairs your cell phone screen? He was like, cell phone screens didn't exist. So I would say for people, keep a very open mind and don't focus so much on the jobs that AI is going to eliminate, but let's try to think of all the jobs AI will help create and all the new types of industries that are going to be created by AI and all the opportunity that exists. And yes, AI will eliminate some jobs. The car eliminated a lot of jobs. Horse and carriage got eliminated. So yes, there are always impacts on jobs when technology comes out, but there's also a positive impact on jobs and a positive impact. And anybody who knows me will always tell you I'm a optimist times 10. So I know my view is very optimistic, and I don't want my optimism to overshadow some of the harsh realities. But I think if you can sort of keep a little bit more positive focus, it can help keep you excited and not be so focused on all the negative impacts, because there's going to be some negative impacts. I'm a realist to that point. Anything else I want to discuss? Oh, one of the things that we're finding a lot of fun, and the article has generated a ton of outreach, is from what I would call underutilized content, or content that got put on a shelf and didn't seem to have a life, of giving it a second life. We got an outreach from a university, and they're like, God, we have all these text documents and all this great research and all this information that will never see the light of day because nobody really cares to read it. And they're like, could you convert it all to audio? And could you make it a little more exciting? That gets me excited. Funny enough, a lot of Hollywood, as much as they're throwing spears at us right now, is reaching out to us of what can we do with their back catalogs? How could we give them a second life in the AI world? And there's some massive, massive catalogs and libraries out there that are just sitting. And I do think AI is going to give the capability to sort of bring some of this stuff out of the closet. It's going to get some of the stuff off the shelf, and it's going to give life to content that is really, really great that young people just don't know about or don't consume because it's not being delivered to them or being delivered in a way that they want it. I also have gotten some outreach because, and it's a huge wrestling match I think a lot of the broadcaster and streamers are having, is with the live sports works. It just seems to grab people. It grabs people at a specific time. And a lot of this very long tail content that we're creating is getting sort of put in this category of critical content. And it's as valuable and as necessary to people as sports, but it's during more of a daytime or a morning time. And so I think as we continue to grow, we're going to be exploring that and really diving more into critical content and producing a lot more of it because it is serving the underserved. And it is critical to those people. I always talk about a Pollen Report podcast I had done that 7 people listened to. And if I took it down, 7 people would be really bummed out because I suspect that every morning they wake up, they hear the podcast, and they decide what they have to do to combat their allergies that day. Or should they even go outside that day? So I see a lot of this critical content starting to emerge and become a much larger growing category, and us sort of leading that.
I would suggest to people that if they came across your content and they were the sort of people that were irritated in a way, then I would say to them, in that case, if you're looking for that content yourself and you're not happy with what's there for you, go out and create create it yourself. Use it as a diving off point to have a go at it yourself. So I think that's also a positive to take from this.
Yeah, and I agree. If you don't like it, change that channel. I'm not forcing anybody to listen. And as far as people like with 5,000 podcasts, you're polluting. The system that created those 5,000 podcasts, it could have created 5 million. Trust me, we throttled it down a lot. And people who know me know that when I build a system, if I let it really run, it could do a lot more. It could have created 5 million podcasts in a matter of months. But we knew that would have been polluting and we would have had no control. 5,000 sounds like a lot, but that's fairly limited. And it allowed us to maintain a level of control and quality so that it is acceptable. And I would also say to people, we make mistakes. We are human. AI will make mistakes. It is a baby form of intelligence. I don't run around and point to people's mistakes. I love the carpet makers. They used to always they purposely do a mistake to quote, let the evil run out. If you're not making mistakes, you're not trying. And I would rather try and fail than be so worried about making a mistake or ruffling a feather that I don't do it at all. And I hope more people have that sort of attitude as we move forward with AI, that we got to make the mistakes because we got to try. And I will always give credit to the people trying and knowing that they fail. And when you're willing to do that publicly and suffer embarrassment, great, go for it. And I can never promise that we will be mistake free. That's why the threshold in tech is 5 nines, 99.999. Because guess what? It will go down. Google goes down. There are always going to be mistakes. And I think as humans, we understand that and we're accepting of it. I can't tell you how many podcasts I hear from really, quote, the premium of the premium, where they make factual errors. There's audio glitches. There's all the things that people are pounding on us for exist across the entire podcast universe. There's also zero barrier to entry into the podcasting space. Anybody, and the podcast universe is polluted with them, podcasts that just mean nothing to very few people or mean something to very few people. Or I can't tell you how many podcasts I'll encounter in my searches where it's somebody who did one episode and then just decided not to. I think during the coronavirus, there was an explosion of what I call now orphaned podcasts. Do I get mad at the person because I don't get episode 2? It's not the best experience, but I rarely take the time to write them an email saying, you're ruining humanity because you didn't drop episode 2. Because guess what? I just don't listen to that podcast. And thank God there's a million other podcasts out there for me to choose from. And I do think that there are different podcasts of different flavors, and some are dramas, and some are comedies, and some are conversations, and some are single person. And we're a different type of podcast. We're not for everybody. But the people who are enjoying our content, thank you. Please keep listening. And the people who find us, thank you. Interestingly enough, 22% of our traffic comes from smart speakers. So I think we are answering a lot of the questions that people are asking. And as anytime you get an answer to a question you ask, you're pretty happy. So I think we're delighting a lot of people. And I also think that smart speakers are getting deployed everywhere, clearly, because that number keeps growing very, very fast. And yeah, I love that we're providing a service. It's fun. And I love that some of our podcasts are entertaining people. And I love that some of them are telling the biographies of people. And one of our most successful mini brands within our thing is our biographies. And they're what I call living biographies. I also worked at A&E, and we owned History Channel, Biography Channel. And the one thing I always bummed me about a biography is if it was of a living person, you could create the biography, and by the time you were done creating it, there was all this other stuff the person had done. It didn't go along and live with them. With AI and in the space we're existing, we now update those biographies sometimes bi-weekly, if not weekly. So if you're interested in Dua Lipa, you subscribe, and every time Dua Lipa does something great, you find out about it. And that's exciting. That's a capability. Like I said, nobody was paying the cost of doing a whole nother shoot or adding to that biography because it was too expensive. And we can do that. And that way the person can really engage with the people they love. I'm a Justin Bieber fan, and I love hearing everything about Justin Bieber. And I subscribe to my Justin Bieber BioFlash. So it's fun for me. I know it's weird. I'm a Justin Bieber and Jensen Huang fan. That requires time on my psychiatrist's couch, but I am. I also love Britney Spears, and I subscribe to her podcast I created. Most of our podcasts we created were purely things we were interested in. Surfing Report, I surf. Ski Report, I ski. I did a podcast on the weather in space because I love knowing if there's solar flares and are they going to impact Starlink and all the other services that I use. That one does really, really well. Apparently, a lot of other people were interested in the weather in space. Yeah, and that's the other thing I love finding out from our data is, oh, there's other people who like things that I like. And then I also find the ones that I think are going to be so good and people absolutely love, nobody listens to. And we have a whole category of novelty podcasts. I think one that gets talked about a lot is I have a podcast called A Moment of Silence. It does really well, and it is 1 minute of silence. Bird songs for cats, that does pretty well too. But I think people do play it for their cats. It's all bird songs, great bird songs.
Minute of Silence, you would probably have a big fan with Neil Young with that one, because he did something similar, didn't he, for a contractual obligation for a record.
Yeah, I tried to do interactive podcasts. People don't seem to like interacting with the podcast. We've tried to do audio sort of gamified podcasts. And so we've tried some things that have failed, but I think we're going to always keep trying, because when we do find an audience, we then will serve that audience as much as we can. And there's a listener for everything. There really is. And there's somebody will watch a YouTube video or subscribe to an Instagram or TikTok channel. Labubu dolls have proven just about everything.
Absolutely. Okay, so thank you for speaking with me today, William. This has been fascinating.
Martin, thank you so much for having me. I'm always happy to participate in these and always happy to answer any questions and talk about what we do, because I am passionate about what we do and I am a human and I've embraced AI and I want more people to do that.
Absolutely. So how can people contact you if they need to?
They can always send an email to William@InceptionPoint.ai. I'm on LinkedIn. If they're nervous about contacting me directly, info@InceptionPoint.ai. But here's the crazy thing. You have to put in on Apple, you have to put an email address and phone number on every podcast. So Matt, it's my email and my phone number on 5,000 podcasts. I get an inordinate amount of I can make your podcast grow emails,
yes.
But I also do get a lot of, hey, that was neat. Can you also do one on this? And I always do it. If somebody asks me for a podcast, we will create it. Unless we stay out of a lot of topics. We don't do anything, no porn, no section, no supremacist, no anti this, anti that. But if somebody asks me and it's within reason, I will do it. So I love when people actually take the time to find that email and hit me. But yeah, I am. And as anyone can attest, I will, if somebody reaches out on LinkedIn or through email, I don't leave the office until I've answered every single one. It takes a lot of time some days. Weirdly, some bots seem to be hooked up for every new podcast that goes live. I get a I can grow your podcast audience 10,000 times. So those I ignore. But I think anybody who reaches out and contacts me, negative, positive, doesn't matter. I will always try to respond as much as possible. So I appreciate the inbound stuff.
Thank you. You can find Pods Like Us on any streaming platform, and you can contact me and get hold of the socials just by going to themarvzone.org. Anyway, thank you everyone for listening, and hope you listen again to another episode of Pods Like Us.